Salam Radio. Salam Radio. 106.2 FM.
Good evening and welcome to Friday Night Prime. I'm your host, Akil Khalil, and tonight we are diving into a pressing issue affecting millions across the UK, the cost of living crisis. From rising food and energy costs to families struggling to make ends meet, we are here to explore what's being done to tackle these challenges locally and nationally. Now, I'm joined in the studio by two guests making a difference in their fields. Nisha Beg Khan, Think Communities Place Coordinator at Peterborough City Council, and Eva Rosa Woods, Youth and Communities Intern. Assalamu alaikum. Great to have you both here in the studio with me. Now, together we'll discuss the real impact of the crisis and explore solutions, including initiatives like the Household Support Fund and Community Hub services. Throughout the show, we'll unpack the scale of the crisis, what support is available, and what still needs to be done. We'll also hear how you can access resources or get involved in helping your community. And as ever, you can get in touch with the show by calling us on 01733 602 133, or you can text the show on 07411 191062, or if you're tech savvy, you can text on our live streams, Facebook, YouTube, X, or Twitch. Now, poverty in the UK, 22% of the population, that's 14.4 million people, lives in poverty, including 4.3 million children, and that's from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, a staggering statistic in itself. We also have the rising costs. You have inflation on essential goods remaining high, with food inflation hovering around 16%, meaning families are paying significantly more for staples like bread, milk and eggs. And of course, who can forget, we have fuel poverty. Over 6.9 million UK households are considered to be in fuel poverty, spending a disproportionate amount of income on heating their homes. These numbers paint a stark picture, but behind them are real people, families struggling to keep food on the table and homes warm. Let's start by understanding the local context here. Nisha, can you tell us how the cost of living crisis specifically impacted Peterborough and who is feeling the effects most acutely?
Okay, so I've had the privilege of working through COVID when we had a lot of issues during COVID where it highlighted poverty in Peterborough specifically, and we dealt with that as a council. I was on the COVID support hub, and that knowledge that I got from that allowed me to use that to sort of support when it came to this fund that came from DWP. So it's been running since about 2021. Mm-hmm. This is Household Support Fund. We've named it Household Support Fund so that we can track it. So Household Support Fund 6 is running now, but it went from Household Support Fund 1. And every year the national government, Department of Work and Pensions gave a massive fund to local authorities and said, here you go, deal with the cost of living crisis. Now, as you mentioned, it's all stemmed from the fact that the prices have gone up for fuel and mainly food support. So the whole angle of the criteria for the fund is to support with those things, which is fuel, food, but also essentials. Because what came out from COVID was that things like nappies and things like, and I'm talking about Peterborough normally, sanitary towels, razors, things that are normal things weren't accessible or affordable. So that's why the cost of living put in that essentials criteria in there as well, and white goods. White goods became a wider essential in that category. So Peterborough itself showed that it affected a number of people. The actual criteria for the fund is the elderly, the disabled, families with children, and other. Now, other is like quite a wide one, but in Peterborough that captures like homeless people, definitely is a big thing. So the fund gave that element of, these are the people that you can help, which is quite wide and quite flexible. But in Peterborough, it hit everyone, like from young families with children to specifically those who have 2+ children were the ones that affected the most because they weren't able to pay for their rent. And these weren't just normal families that were poor. These are working families. So you had like families where there's like a nurse, there's a builder or a taxi driver and, a woman working part-time, and they weren't able to put bread on the table. So the whole beautiful thing about this fund is there isn't a criteria, so you don't have to be on benefits for it. You might have a property and your mortgage has just gone through the roof and you can't pay for your fuel. So it's hard because when it comes to supporting, you have to put your own initiative in. But our hubs have done it really well. So I'll leave the hubs bit maybe when you ask me those questions.
Yeah, sure. So just talking specifically around the household support fund, has version 1 changed much to version 6? Is there more people that are being captured by 6 now?
Definitely.
Okay.
And that's purely because of the brilliant work that the hubs have been doing. When I go into it, I can explain it. But it started off with Household Support 1, which was a bit like, local authority was like, well, how do we do this? Do we give it to certain organisations? Do we just give it to Citizen Advice? Or do we just give it to Age UK? All those good organisations. But when it came to, so Household Support Fund 2 was specifically just for the elderly. So that focus, the main person or the organisation that dealt with that was Age UK. But then when it came to 3, 4, 5, which I'm proud of, is when I got really involved in it. And we used that learning from the COVID response to spit all that money out into the neighbourhood. So it's neighbourhood support. And that's where all the cost of, we call them cost of living hubs, but all these organisations that came forward and we said, we're going to give you this bit of money. Now, you know your neighbourhood better than anyone. You give it to the people that come to you. And I think that's the best decision we've made as a local authority.
Sounds absolutely awesome, because you're obviously listening to communities, organisations through the relationships that you've built, and you've learned and understood that the best way to help people is by working with organisations who are already doing grassroots work. Don't you think, Eva?
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that comes out of working with grassroots organisations is they know their communities, they're trusted by their communities, and cost of living issues are so complex. It's not just, the prices of things have increased and I'm now struggling to feed my family. That transforms into all kinds of issues through challenges it creates in the home or challenges for young people in education whose families are struggling. And all of these issues of health and well-being and skills, and sometimes things like domestic conflicts and domestic violence as well, they're all so interlinked that if you were just to turn up and anonymously pick up some food or some fuel support, nobody would know about all those links. And we wouldn't be able to understand it as public sector as well, what the community actually needs in terms of support. So it's really important to have those people on the ground who know their communities inside out and are trusted, because they're able to support people rather than just numbers.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Having personal experience in that situation where somebody gets in touch with your organisation, the initial interaction is based on food, but then it unravels. You realise there's either sexual abuse there's financial abuse there. Like Nisha said, you might find somebody just driven in a new car. It's a company car, but all of their wages have been taken up by a mortgage and potentially a couple of bills, but there's still not enough food. And it's just the sad reality of what's actually taking place in Britain at the moment, which is you have low-paying jobs, lack of jobs. We know this now because of some of the research. I think it was, I was listening today, I think he's the CEO of Reed, the recruitment agency, and he reported that jobs October to November are down 13%. So there's a potential chance or another recession coming our way, right?
Yeah.
So you have these fears, and also your money doesn't go that far, right? So, I think today I purchased a loaf of bread, mince pies, because I like mince pies. I just need to just to put that out there, okay? Mince pies and then 4 energy drink bottles, okay? And it came to £5.50, okay? And I paid for it, alhamdulillah, it's okay. But I walked away, I was thinking to myself, actually, do you know what? This is not cheap. Yeah, a bread is like £1.85p, right? And to some people, that's fine. To others, there are people within the city, they're on £25, £30 a week, and they can't afford this. So they rely on a hub, like the ones that you support, to come in, pick up a package that just gets them through that week, if it can. So it's a very, very delicate situation, isn't it? Benisha, can you tell me a little bit more about the different types of hubs that you support?
Yeah, so it's quite exciting. I'm quite passionate about this. So this is like the third round running with the same sort of method that we used, where we had the money, we split it, and we gave ourselves, we split the money to say that equally. Each hub will be allowed X amount of money from the fund. And we gave each hub 25% admin, which means that that's their running costs, right? And what we did was we selected, it all started by selecting organisations that were very active during COVID throughout the city. So in a geographical area, there were the hotspots of poverty. And in those poverty hotspots, there were organisations doing the work. And we took that learning and we actually analysed it and made sure that there was a hub in an areas where there's high poverty. That way we were reaching those people that weren't being able to reach. That's how it all started. But after that, there was a lot of interest. So a lot of organisations came forward and said, we want to be a hub. And there was an expression of interest form at one stage. And now we've just run with it, where we've actually recognised which organisations are active, are able to report, they're actually delivering with the money and have been successful in it. So there's 3 rounds that's happened. Now, these are a mixture of organisations ranging from community centres, groups that are situated in community centres. You've got groups like, I'm going to name a few, Bernardo's, Family Voice, the Dominion Church. And what's so beautiful is that this time round, this is a Muslim radio show, so I'm going to talk about it because I'm quite proud of it. Traditionally, it's been churches that have been supporting, but through this work, we've actually got organisations that are masjids. So we've got 3 masjids actually that have been supporting throughout this whole household support fund, which is Khadija Mosque, a part of ICARE, which Brother Akil is very, very active in. It's his baby. Then we've got Fazana Medina, and then we've got also Burton Road Mosque. They were part of it on a couple of the rounds as well. So it's actually been quite refreshing to have masjids a part of the whole delivery, and actually local authorities outside of Peterborough have been interested in that, because I go and talk about what we do as Peterborough and they're really keen to get involved. So that's the other thing. What's happened with these hubs is because of the array of different organisations doing different delivery models, partners have come forward. So we've got partners such as Brother Akil would know, like the local authority partners such as AGK or whatever, the vaccine hubs, health colleagues, everyone's interested in the hubs, and they're like, can we actually do engagement there, whether it be sexual health, whether it be this or whether it be that. There's different organisations that have come forward and they're actually getting involved with small organisations that they wouldn't have done in the first place.
And that's one of the beauties of this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Captive audience.
Definitely. And we've got there's a little church called the Dominion Church, which is African Caribbean. They would have never, ever had the confidence to do this sort of work. But it's kind of like holding their hand sometimes and showing them what other good practices are. And that's the beauty of it. There's a network. So the hubs get on with each other. We have a mailing list. And I've tried to tailor it so that we can support. So Brother Akil knows really well, we've said that there's a need for council tax arrears, there's debt for individual families that have got arrears in council tax. So what we've done is we've said that each hub can allow them to help one family per family £100 off their council tax arrears. Now that's something that's that could really help a family out.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then there's also the white goods. We've given the option to hubs that, up to a cap. So we've managed it really well. We've given a cap for each item. You can help a family with white goods because that's a big cost.
What's the cap?
The cap is £150 per washing machine, or if it's another item like a fridge, we can't go and get an American fridge because we don't.
This is understandable.
We recognise that there's also we don't. That's the other thing. We work so closely that we want to make sure that we're helping clients that are actually in need. You're always going to get some people taking the mic all, but then what we do is we've worked together with our whole. I'm working on the privacy statement GDPR thing where we have a spreadsheet that we can check who's been given what within the hub. So, and we talk to each other about repeat users, and things like that. So there's a little bit of that, but in that is one of the criticisms. People say there's a lot of people then go to each hub, take one parcel, then take another parcel, and then they go and get another.
But ultimately, the hub has no control over that.
No, the hub doesn't have control.
Some of us, like ICARE, as you mentioned it, we have a policy where you can get a parcel once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's it. We've the way our model works is that we want to ensure we can help as many different types of people. So you can't just queue up every week, and we manage data underneath GDPR and so on. And it works really well.
That's the thing.
And the users have got so used to it now. They now know. In the beginning, when it was set up, people were trying it. We had a lady at the beginning of the queue, so we've served her. Then her husband, he's later in the queue. He gets to the front, and we're like, these details all match, and he basically disowned her.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, we're still not going to give it to him. And then we went outside, and he was talking to her in his own car, and I was just like,
we have that. We do see that. And the thing is, we have that for Zana Medina as well. Like you catch them out and stuff like that. But ultimately, you build a relationship with the client, so they know that if you do that, they can't come back again.
This is true. This is very true.
And in comparison, it's only a very small amount, isn't it?
Most people are really, really good, understanding, compassionate. They also know there's a finite amount of parcels as well.
Masisondele phila noxolo yelele
Subhanallah walhamdulillah La ilaha illallah wallahu akbar Subhanallah walhamdulillah La ilaha illallah wallahu akbar You can say it once or 100 times or more You'll feel a peace inside and it'll open every door That's the power of remembering Allah It's the best way to purify your heart Know you will be loved by the merciful one 'Cause that's the power of remembering Allah Subhanallah walhamdulillah La ilaha illallah wallahu akbar Subhanallah walhamdulillah La ilaha illallah wallahu akbar So much you can gain just by saying those few words You can renew your faith and be showered in reward Oh, that's the power of remembering Allah It's the best way to purify your heart You know you will be loved by the merciful one 'Cause that's the power of remembering Allah La ilaha illallah La ilaha illallah La ilaha illallah Subhanallah walhamdulillah wallahu akbar
masisondele kuyuwala okukhulu usitho sizothola ukuphila
That's the power of remembering Allah It's the best way to purify your heart Oh, that's the power of remembering Allah It's the best way to purify your heart You know you will be loved by the merciful one 'Cause that's the power of remembering Allah Subhanallah walhamdulillah La ilaha illallah wallahu akbar
And that was The Power by Maher Zain, a beautiful nasheed. We're talking about the cost of living crisis here with Nisha and Eva, both from Peterborough City Council. If you have any questions, you can comment on the live stream, Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch, or you can text the show on 07411 191062. Now, while councils like Peterborough are stepping up to provide support, they're also under immense pressure. From stretched budgets to growing demand for services, local governments face a tough balancing act. Working poverty, which is a term that's really been used a lot since COVID, hasn't it? More than half of people in poverty are in working households, something that Nisha has been talking about earlier on as well, demonstrating that the rising costs are outpacing wages. The Trussell Trust reports that 1.3 million food parcels were distributed between April and September 2024, a record high. And what's important about this stat is a lot of the hubs Nisha has mentioned tonight, which are supported by Peterborough, don't actually fall underneath the Trussell Trust, which means this stat is even higher.
Exactly.
And we also know it was the previous government. Remember, they were in power for a long time, weren't they?
Yeah.
It was the previous government that they were supporting this household fund. Labour has crucially also said that it was going to increase it, okay, and keep it, okay. Now, Nisha, can you tell me, what are the main challenges your council is facing in delivering support programs like HSF?
Okay, so the main thing for us is the fact that obviously we've just had an election, so we were we had hubs that were relying on this funding, so we were waiting keenly for the decision as to whether it's going to be renewed or not, and that was quite stressful, and obviously not just for us but also for the actual community hubs, because a lot to do with the whole, when we say it's hitting residents, the cost of living is hitting hubs as well. So you've got churches that can't afford their bills.
Yeah.
So when they're relying on the fund from the government, they're thinking, okay, if I don't get the funding this year, then how are we going to keep our community cafe open, for instance? And what my criticism of the government would be the fact that it's so much lastminute.com. We literally found out a week before that it was going to be renewed. We were then told that the programme period is only for 6 months for this one that we're currently in, and we had to get the money out like really quickly. Basically, we found out 2 weeks before, then we had to get the money out, and obviously there's finances, there's grant agreements, and Brother Akil would know back and forth, you have to sign second signature, and the process of making sure everything's in there, the admin fees capped, blah blah blah, all that sort of context goes in the back. So our communities team is just like two of us plus one. So then there's us doing that, and also us helping legal, because legal is 2 plus 1. So all that stress comes on us to try and get the money out, because you've got these really, really important hubs looking at you for support. So with with national government, it's just having that conversation and planning. The good thing is we had a good result. The good result is this time it's going to be renewed for another year rather than 6 months. And a year gives us a lot of time to actually work with the hubs closely and use the funding to its best ability.
Okay, so the current one ends when?
Current one is March 31st.
And the new one will start when?
April.
Okay. It's interesting, isn't it? From my perspective, when we get an email and it will say, this is what's happening, this is your timeline, this is your date. And I'm like, why is it so short notice? But now I know.
Yeah.
It's because you're also being shortchanged from a national government,
Well,
right?
it's important for anybody who's politically active and listening in, who cares about lobbying for issues that are important to them. When it comes to cost of living support, at the moment, a lot of that is coming from the Department for Work and Pensions. It's coming from central government. So it's important to keep talking to your councillors, but absolutely to your MPs as well, because a lot of this is coming down from Westminster. But we don't know what in the long term, where cost of living support, where that burden and that responsibility is going to fall. The funding's got to come from somewhere, but a lot of what happens is things like this that are funded from government programmes, they'll be seen as a short-term measure to deal with a crisis, with an ambition that in the longer term, charities will take on that responsibility for themselves. They'll become sustainable. So in theory, this isn't something that's being discussed, but this is what happens with a lot of programmes across health and youth and all kinds of programmes. funding will come from the public sector for a while, with the hope that that funding doesn't have to go on forever. So we expect charities to take on the burden, but they're not ready to do that yet. We have to support all the amazing charities in our city to be sustainable and not pull the plug at short notice, which is what sometimes unfortunately happens when budgets are being discussed.
Yes, because then it goes back to not humans, numbers.
Numbers,
Which, look, from an organisation perspective, you can understand that.
yeah.
Because you have vast amounts of money. It needs to go out. It needs to be managed correctly. Data is really, really important. But I totally understand that now. I think from my perspective now, I have more of an appreciation. You know, and this is, I'm sure hubs across Peterborough as well are in the similar situation where, you know, an email lands in and you're like, okay, why is it that we don't get a couple of weeks notice? Because we're so good with providing the rest of the information. But it's interesting. Look, we're heading towards a break. Do stay tuned for more of the cost of living crisis here with Eva and Nisha.
You're listening to Salam Radio, and it's now time for Isha Azan.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي
This is Salam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Welcome back to Friday Night Prime. I'm your host, Akil Khalil. If you just tuned in, we're talking about the cost of living crisis with Nisha and Eva from Peterborough City Council. You can get in touch with the show on 07411 191 062, or you can comment on the live stream, Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch. Now, Eva, can you tell me, charities and local organisations who often fill in the gaps left by local government or government generally, what role do they play, and how effective has collaboration been between grassroots organisations and the Peterborough City Council from your perspective as you manage young people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure Nisha can jump in as well around this, because the thing that led to a lot more collaboration between the charity sector and the councils and health organisations was COVID, because we had all this messaging that needed to go out into the community about vaccines, about support and community safety. And we realised that it's not local authorities and the NHS that hold those relationships, it's community organisations. So Nisha was there and can tell that story. Unfortunately, I was still at school at this point. But
How young are you?
well, I dare not confess on the airs. But yeah, so it was COVID that taught us a lot of lessons about the importance of community organisations in delivering projects from the public sector. And that stayed as part of our way of working. I know the Integrated Care Board does a lot of this, but we certainly do as a council in trying to, a lot of any initiative which sits around improvements to or support for the community, our first instinct now is, okay, who are our partners in the community? Who do we work with? Who needs to be part of this decision making? Which is one of the good things that's come out of it. We realised, or local governments learned the difficult lesson that you can't just expect community organisations to deliver exactly what you're asking them to deliver, because we're not the experts in how the community functions. People in our roles have to be, but our colleagues certainly wouldn't claim to be experts in how the community works. So we're getting better and better at involving charities and voluntary sector organisations in how programmes are planned. So when we're saying we need to deliver cost of living support, mental health support, whatever it is, we're speaking to charities right from the word go about, okay, what do you think will work and how can we collaborate on that? So we're definitely getting into a better space.
Yeah.
But the big issue is around sustainability and kind of admin and running costs, because sometimes when a little bit of money's trying to go a long way, we forget just how difficult it is for charities to stay afloat. One of the other hats I wear is I'm a trustee at Peterborough Council for Voluntary Service, and what that charity does is basically a charity that supports charities. So any kind of voluntary sector organisation in Peterborough can come to PCVS and get support with things like fundraising and advertising, recruiting volunteers, recruiting trustees. So if you haven't heard of it, then it's a really key piece of infrastructure for the voluntary sector. But what we always find is everyone wants to fund projects, everyone wants to give grants to fund a particular thing for a set amount of time, but that's not sustainable, and a charity can't employ staff and keep itself going on that. So we rely so heavily on volunteers, which again is fantastic. There are so many brilliant volunteers and good-minded people in the city, but people get burnt out, and when people need to take a rest, there's no guarantee that work is taking place.
This is true. And just to add to that, you know, there are organisations in the city right across, faith and no-faith organisations, where people every year are putting in, as a collective, they're putting in thousands of hours for free. And, you know, like you mentioned there as well, depending on what their operating model is, right? Some people are driven by faith, some people are just driven by humanity, or both. And so that just keeps them going, doesn't it? So you have some organisations that have been going for a really long time. And one of the reasons for that is because they what they believe in. And some people just believe in wanting to live in a better place, or wanting to just help the human. Some are driven by their faith. Part of their faith is to help people. You have to look at the Sikh community with their langar and all the other things that they do. You have the Muslim community, which is a fundamental part of their faith to help people. Same in Christianity, you know, and other faiths as well. And you have other organisations that are not faith-based related, but they see the human and they want to help the human. And I think from a personal perspective, you know, all organisations just want to help and have a better Peterborough, don't
Exactly.
they? Right. And I think the household support fund plays a crucial role in plugging a gap where there's a service that can be maintained and managed for an X period of time, 6 months, 12 months, whatever it may be. Whilst also some organisations will have 3 or 4 other things that they're doing, and it just complements that.
Yeah.
Whereas other organisations, this will be their main thing.
Yeah.
And they then build a community from helping. That hub may start off quite small. And then it just rapidly grows because they become really good at what they're doing, don't they?
Yeah,
you might have a
so-
cafe or a fridge somebody's
Exactly.
walking into,
So-
and they're like picking foods, from different shelves and stuff. And all you'll have, I mean, I've read recently that I don't know if it's in Peterborough. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there is a membership. I think you pay £5 a month or something, and you walk in. You can take anything
Yeah.
you want.
Country.
Fair share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my point being here is that people are delivering a service in a different way to different parts of Peterborough, but every single one of these people are benefiting from this fund. But it's also allowing these organisations to then think, okay, how can we develop a new service outside of this fund,
Yeah.
or how can we use this fund differently? So I can tell you from an iCare perspective, one of the things that we do is we deliver food. We don't just have people walk in, we also deliver it. We've been doing that since 2021. It's one of our USPs. We literally go out, you know this, Nisha, and you know this as well, Eva. We deliver food. Everything from, long life items, fresh items, cooked meals and so on. And, you learn from one service to the next. You think, okay, right, we can branch this off, we can do this way and so on. And I've noticed that other hubs are doing something, maybe not the same as us, but they are doing different things. It's not just one thing. And for me, it's brilliant, and it's really great to see that there's so many organisations in Peterborough doing this. It saddens me as well that the situation's actually only gotten worse.
Yeah.
It hasn't improved. It really hasn't.
Because the need is so it's skyrocketed.
It has. It's
Yeah.
vast.
Yeah.
And like you said at the top of the show, Nisha, it's everyone.
Yeah, everyone's getting affected. It's the pinch. They call it the pinch, right? Everyone's feeling the pinch.
Yeah, no
Um,
doubt.
All of us, it doesn't matter what salary you're on, you're feeling the pinch. But I'd just like to come in on sustainability, if that's all right, because what the beautiful thing about this is when we give the hubs a chance to develop themselves, if I give you an example of how one hub managed to secure more funding just from working with this fund.
Wow.
So Wellspring, which is Breton Baptist Church, they did household support 3 and 4. What they did is they applied for National Lottery for their kitchen, and on the application they showed that they were doing a cafe through the household support fund, offering it to like a community cafe through the fund and stuff like that. National Lottery then gave them 50k to do their whole kitchen up. So
That's fantastic.
If that's not sustainability, then what is?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing I was just going to say is whilst we're doing the household support fund, we had national government through the comp funding, which is COVID support, because right after COVID, there was recovery support. Money came in and we were like, we need to use this money by March. So at one point, I'm not sure if IK was in that one. It might have been the one that you came in afterwards.
We came in at 5.
I think at 5, but this says at 4. We split it and we gave 8k to each hub because that funding was sitting there. We're like, where do we get it out to people the quickest?
Is
The hubs are
it a
sitting
case
there.
of spend it or lose it?
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
exactly.
okay.
So March we had to spend it so quickly, 180k. We split it between the hubs and chucked them 8k each. And I can tell you now, Fazana Medina has used that for Family Fun Day, for support, and the criteria there is just for engagement to ask people have they had their vaccine or not. Simple, engagement tactics. But that 8k, other hubs have used that to get IT equipment. Other hubs, like yourself, you've got, like you said to me about your cams, your body cams and stuff like that. So it's not just about giving the money one time and that's it. The sustainability just stems out of it.
It does, yeah. And I'll tell
Yeah.
you something, it's good that you mentioned this because it gives you an opportunity to just step back, look at what you're doing and think, okay, how can we improve for the benefit of our service users and our volunteers, and so that we carry on, right? And it's a good problem to have. I'll be honest with you, it's a good problem to have. We want more, by the way. Just putting that out there. No, but it's crucial. It's crucial because you see that the government itself understands that they need locals. They need their own relationships with local councils, and the only way they're going to get to the man on the street is by going through the council, and then a grassroots organisation then delivers that service. But I mean, you just have to look at what's happening in the country at the moment, right across the length and the breadth of the United Kingdom. You know, this isn't going away.
No.
You know, there was one point I remember when it started. I don't know why, but I just thought, you never know. This might 12 months, 18 months max. We might be on the other side of this, but we haven't.
No.
Remember, the mortgages all went up when we had that disastrous budget with Liz Truss, and then.
Liz who?
Yeah, exactly. But the point being, it's never really. I mean, it's come down, but the man on the street hasn't felt
still,
it.
Yeah.
You know, the basics are still expensive,
Definitely.
and fuel is still expensive. Energy is still really expensive.
Yeah, of course.
This year we had a 10% increase. I think it was in October, and then we've had a 1.2 I think percent increase that's coming in January. And I know yesterday I was on a business call with someone, and this person is in a well-paid job, was wearing multiple layers, but was refusing to switch on their house heating because they couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And I was just sat there and I was just thinking, how are we living? And, you know, how is this happening in 2024 in Britain? But it is, you know, and I don't expect you both to answer this, but I do feel that this country requires its own, we shouldn't be energy dependent anywhere else. That's one of the things for me. And also, my other side of this as well is that the energy companies, that includes water, gas, electricity and so on, are making billions and billions of pounds in profits. And they could just wipe out the debt. If they can't bring the prices down, they should wipe out all debt for all of their customers and they still would make a profit. That's the crazy thing, you know. And that's Britain 2024.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, 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 yeah. Let me tell you about my happiness. I get my happiness from Islam. It makes me kind and a better human. Oh, please come with me and I'll show you why. I smile because I'm happy. I'm a Muslim, that's what makes me happy, and that's the truth. Because I'm happy, because I have the noble Quran, and that's where I get my rules. Because I'm happy, because my Lord is merciful and He is the forgiving one. Because I'm happy, and I have the Sunnah which dictates what my life should do. Okay, come on. In Islam we have one God. Muhammad is His final messenger. Peace be upon Him. We are taught to love and respect Don't believe what you hear about Islam. I smile because I'm happy. I'm a Muslim, that's what makes me happy, and that's the truth. Because I'm happy, because I have the noble Quran, and that's where I get my rules. Because I'm happy, because my Lord is merciful and He is the forgiving one. Because I'm happy, and I have the Sunnah which dictates what my life should do. I just wanna tell the world that we're happy. Just because we're Muslim doesn't mean we're angry. But when we see our fellow Muslims that are suffering, we just wanna help cause we're one big family. I'm a Muslim, that's what makes me happy, and that's the truth. Because I'm happy, cause I have the noble Quran, and that's where I get my rules. Because I'm happy, because my Lord is merciful and He is the forgiving one. Because I'm happy, and I have the Sunnah which dictates what my life should do. Because I'm happy, I'm a Muslim, that's what makes me happy, and that's the truth. Because I'm happy, because I have the noble Quran, and that's where I get my rules. Because I'm happy, because my Lord is merciful and He is the forgiving one. Because I'm happy, and I have the Sunnah which dictates what my life should do. I'm so happy I'm a Muslim.
And that was Happy by Omar Issa. Great track. I'm in the studio here with Nisha and Eva from Peterborough City Council talking about the cost of living crisis impacting the UK and Peterborough specifically. If you have any questions for them, any comments, you can leave them on our live stream, Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch, or you can text the show on 07411 191 062. Look, while the cost of living crisis poses immediate challenges, it's also a chance to rethink long-term solutions. From building resilient communities to fostering innovation in public services, there's an opportunity to create lasting change. And I know both of you, with your remits, you're trying to do this in different ways. Of course, you are with your different ways of trying to operate the hubs and learning and understanding. And then you've got either the youth side of things, where I guess you have more opportunity to affect what's going to happen to young minds in the future. Am I right?
Yeah, I think a lot of my work sits in the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Careers Hub. So we're trying to, obviously, as we've discussed, there's a lot of poverty in work, which is really frightening because it's not a case of people aren't earning an income. People are earning an income and it's not sufficient to support themselves. But that doesn't mean that skills is any less important, because we do have some brilliant growth sectors in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and if we are with employers that are really committed to paying the living wage in the future. So a lot of my work is around supporting young people to horizon scan in terms of jobs and careers and equip themselves to do well in the labour market. But also, one of the key things, we've talked about how the cost of living crisis has been a brilliant opportunity for the public sector and the charities to reconsider how they work together. Another key piece of that is schools. And people may not know, or they probably have realised that schools are mostly run by multi-academy trusts now. They're not run by the local authority anymore. So it's difficult for people like the City Council to influence or kind of have a bird's eye view of how schools are supporting their students with the cost of living crisis. That's not to say they're doing a bad job, because there are some schools in the city who have really dedicated, they're usually called community support members of staff or things like that, and their whole role is to liaise with parents, work with young people to understand what are the wider issues that are preventing them from doing well in their education and accessing school. So there's another key piece there about working with and understanding what schools are doing to support young people and making sure they're aware of all the cost of living support that's on in the city. And that comes down to people collaborating with people and just knowing who's who, but also making sure that's working at a systems level as well. So when we're planning, right, we've got this household support fund, how do we get it out into the community? We're building schools into that picture.
So
that's interesting. Just want to pick up one thing there. I actually experienced that myself. I've seen two schools in Peterborough. One is of course they're run by academies. One was a primary school, and the other is a secondary school, and they have what you've just described, these liaison officers, right? And they specifically deal with families who are struggling and so on, because we were asked to go in there and provide support services and so on. And I was thinking, oh, this is really cool in doing it, but I didn't realise it's not everyone. So this isn't everyone.
Yes.
Okay.
But the good thing is that what you've just mentioned, and I think we need to mention this, a part of the Household Support Fund, a piece of the pie was given to vouchers for schools during school holidays.
Okay.
So a lot of it, like a huge piece of the pie of the main fund was given for, half term. So the kids got the £15 voucher for free school meals and things like that. That's in addition to the free school meals if they're on benefits.
Okay.
And Peterborough City Council is one of the only local authorities that's done that. So there is a little bit of that where there's support. But like you said, Queen Catherine Academy, where my son attends, they have a community cafe where they give out food parcels to families that are struggling. So schools are trying their best, but there has to be more.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's on top of all the other things that they do. So Nisha, I'm conscious of time, but could you tell us the different types of services? So we've discussed already. So there's food parcels, there's energy vouchers, there's white goods, there's cafes, there's fridges. Is there anything we're missing?
So the main thing is food and fuel support, and that can be in any shape or form.
Okay.
So that could be, as you know, I've allowed hubs to top up people's electrics. They're not allowed to do cash exchange, but if someone's struggling, a family comes holistically to a community cafe, they can help them top up their electric, they can help them get a supermarket voucher. So 3 of the hubs in our, out of the 24 now we've got, specifically do Asda vouchers or Aldi vouchers.
Okay.
The only thing is, we try to work with the hubs so they work close together, so that they're not just signposting. There's good signposting, and there's also signposting where each hub should take the initiative to help that person first.
Yes.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
That's the whole purpose of giving the fund.
Yeah.
So there's that, but there's also where they walk in and they can get, so Light Project, they help the homeless. You can have a shower, you can have a meal, you can have, a voucher as well at the same time. So there's so many different elements, but also Care Zone. So we've given funding to Care Zone for furniture. So if that's furniture for families that are moved into new accommodation and they can't afford the furniture, there is a waiting list, but Care Zone provide that service. And AGK do the vouchers. So I don't know if you know about the pension credits. Some people are missing out on that because of the fact that they don't fall into that category. They just fall out of it. So you can get a £100 voucher. And I've done that at the masjid at Fazana Medina because it's quite complex and people don't understand where they can apply and how they can apply. But AGK are given £100 vouchers if they fall within that remit.
Is it quite a simple process?
Yeah, phone them up and go through the process. They'll do an application on the phone.
Okay.
If you fall within it, then you'll get the vouchers through the post. If you fall without it, they'll tell you, but they'll tell you what other things they can apply for.
Okay. It's interesting because I know we've had on our support phones people getting in touch and asking. There's a bit of confusion. Certainly from what we've experienced, people, because it's called Household Support Fund, service users automatically think there's money that they're going to receive. So I often have to say that's not how it works. This is how it is, and these are the things. And most people will then say, actually, I just need some food.
Yeah.
But there are other people who will say, oh, I've been told there's a £200 payment. I'm like, no, you haven't.
No, yeah. And people do try it.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of hubs that said, oh, they've told me that you've sent them to us.
Correct, yeah.
And I'm like, no, we haven't.
Yeah, so by the way, that's the other thing as well.
Yeah.
It always starts with People City Council said this. And I mean, that's a challenge for the hubs. And if you're organised and you're run well, you just absorb it and you educate that person and offer them the support that they need.
Yeah. So it's the whole working together.
Correct.
So I think you agree that we try to communicate together. We try to work together with each other. Like the hubs say, can someone support with this if we can't support it? And I think it's working well. I've from the case studies we've collected, it's been amazing. I'd like to carry on with the model. Not to say that it's guaranteed that it'll be exactly the same, but hopefully it'll be carrying on.
And I mean, yeah, of course. And you mentioned 24. Do you, when there's a new organisation that is getting involved and wants to get in touch with you or wants to do this particular service or be a hub, do you try to not have too much of the same?
Yes,
Okay.
so we try to mix it up a bit, but in terms of location and reach as well.
Yeah.
So we have got a cluster within the Millfield area, but that's because there's a high poverty in the Millfield area. But then we've got Good Neighbours scheme, which deals with the rural areas. So they're part of our hub model this time around. They have been for two of them. So they'll deal with places like Thorney and places like that,
Yeah.
So they've taken on that responsibility to deal with the other rurals, which are a cluster outside Peterborough. But yeah, we've tried to scope it out so there's a resident should be able to access one hub, but the offer's different. So
yes, that's right.
We haven't said you have to, if you want to support, you have to go to your nearest one. We've left it open because the closest one might be a food parcel, whereas you just want a hot meal.
Yeah, that's right. Or some energy.
Yeah.
So tell us, Nisha, I'm conscious of time. If somebody needed some help or needed some support, how should they go about looking for this?
Okay, so we've got a really good web page. Eva's been very a part of that, and she's been amazing. But we've added loads of stuff to it. So if you type in Peterborough City Council cost of living, there's a specific page which has got a list of all the hubs, what they offer, AGK's number for the voucher scheme, Care Zone's referral email address. Anything like that. That page is we've worked really hard to make that user friendly. So go on that, and I've also given out loads of leaflets to each of the hubs, and there's a digi version of that as well. But then our PIN, which is Peterborough Information Network, has a list of each of the hubs, the opening times, and what they offer.
That's really,
and
really
that
good.
link is on the cost of living page.
And what about if there's an organisation out here listening tonight that want to be part of this? How do they get involved?
Contact me, and then when the next round comes, we can look at it. We have got our hubs, the selected hubs that we kind of want to work with, carry that on with. But in saying that, if you don't ask, you won't get. So,
Yeah, no, this is true.
Yeah.
There you have it. If you don't ask, you don't get. I like that, Nisha. It's been great having you both on the show this evening as well. And I hope you've also enjoyed it as well. Look, it's a very serious situation that people are facing, communities are facing right across the length and breadth of the United Kingdom, and especially here in Peterborough. We have high jobless rates here. We also have a high poverty rate here as well. But it's good to see organisations working with the City Council to try and benefit local people in need. And that's the bottom line here, isn't it? There are so many people who are really, really struggling as well. So like Nisha said, just get in touch, go on to, and just remind us once again for the page.
Yeah, so it's Peterborough City Council. Google it for cost of living crisis.
There we go. Peterborough City Council, Google it, she said, cost of living crisis. I just want to say thank you to my guests, Nisha Beg Khan and Rosa Woods, for sharing their insights, and to all of you for listening tonight. The cost of living crisis is tough, but together we can make a difference. Tune in next week for another episode of Friday Night Prime. I've enjoyed your company. Have a great weekend. Stay safe and wrap